Rajan, what is today's price for 100 push-ups?
Today's price. Oh, if I did 100 push-ups?
Or anybody. And there's a background to that. We'll tell you why.
Yeah, I suppose, what would I get if I did 100 push-ups? I'd be ecstatic if I could do 100 push-ups. I think it would be happiness. Today's prize would be happiness.
Yeah?
Happiness, yeah.
Happiness.
That would make me so happy.
So Rajan apparently did 100 push-ups so that his dad could buy him a bike. So how it has changed.
No, that was the goal, by the way. I didn't get the bike.
Oh, you didn't get the bike?
No.
Oh,
I was
you
in
didn't
fourth
do
grade.
it then either.
No, yeah, I was in fourth grade, and my dad was really into sports, and anytime I wanted anything, me or my younger brother, we had to do some sport, and it was always this super stretch goal that we could never get to. So,
like you do with your entrepreneurs.
well, that's what you do, yeah. So, like fourth grade, 100 push-ups, get a bicycle. Didn't get a bicycle till I was like 12. Because every year, the goal just keeps increasing. Swim 2 miles in 5th grade. I mean, that's not possible,
Today, I think the kids would call that abuse or something.
Yeah.
So Rajan, as head of Google, what do you know that we don't?
I actually don't know anything, in fact. I think in Bangalore, you all know so much about what's going on. I'm trying to think. I think apps are not going to exist in a few years. Yeah. So if you're building apps, you're toast.
What comes in its
I don't know.
stead?
You're just toast. Yeah. I mean, that I don't. I mean, I know they're going to be toast. I don't know what's going to come next. Like, why do you need an app? What does an app do? No, seriously. Like, why do you need an app? So let's just say, let's take a use case, okay? I want to buy a ticket to go from, let's say today, Bangalore to Delhi. Like, I want to buy a ticket, right? So today you can go to a website, you can open up an app, you can call up an air travel agency, but I just say, hello Google, Bangalore to Delhi, what are the options? Google tells me, there are 3 flights. What time? Google says, what time do you want to leave? I say, well, between 7 and 8, says these are the 3 flights, these are the fares. I say option number 2, done. That's it. Why do I need an app?
So we're replacing the people that used to do all of that at one time. We got to apps,
Yeah.
so we could do it ourselves.
Yeah.
Now we go to machines to do all of the
Yeah,
same
exactly,
things.
right? So you just talk to the machine does it for you. And ideally, you shouldn't even be able to talk to the machine. The machine should tell you, Rajan, you should be leaving. We're not going to Delhi today. Your Jet Airways flight is delayed. Shall I put you on Indigo? I said, yes. Done. So I actually think so. I mean, look, I don't know whether it's 2 or 3 years, but definitely in the planning horizon, I think everything's going to change. I mean, that's not something that I know that everybody else doesn't, but I think there are too many people still building for the now. You can never build a great company by building for the now. You should always build for the future. And then you get great VCs like you who can wait till the future arrives. Just kidding.
But before the VCs come, you need to get his angel funding because Rajan funds and he tells us there are no apps. This is just our NLP or something else, and then we write our check. So the first question is to get to Rajan, right? So how many of you are building apps now? And those are the brave souls that were willing to be honest about putting their hand up, I think.
What's everybody else doing? I mean, what are you?
Yeah, what's everybody else doing? Feel free to stand up and tell Rajan how you think the world is going to be. Yeah. That's what this session is about, interactive. And if you want to, seriously, you're willing to jump into the discussion. But Rajan, then, last year, about $1 billion was spent in digital marketing in India.
Yeah.
This year, 1.4 or 1.5 or some such number, and creeping up to 5 billion in the next 4 or 5 years, right? That's interesting to these entrepreneurs, or should be interesting. What are the drivers of this change, and in that context, are there any winners and losers?
Yeah, so I think first let's for those of you that are going to try to monetize through ads, right? It's quite relevant. So if you look at the total AdX, the advertising spend in India last year was about $8.5 billion. it's fair to assume that it'll grow at about 12%, right? This year's forecast was slightly higher, but a lot of funding cutbacks in e-commerce and so on and so forth, so maybe it'll be a little lower. But over 5 years, you can assume it's going to be about 12%, which means the total AdX, advertising industry, get to about 15 billion by 2020, right? So then you can say digital, which is this year going to be about 13, 14% of the total AdX. If it's going to be 30%, you're going to end up with about $4.5 billion of advertising. If it's going to be 35%, maybe 5 billion, right? It's highly unlikely it's going to be more than that. So somewhere between 4 and 5 billion is probably a reasonable estimate of where the digital ad market's going to be. And what's really driving that is reach, right? So actually it's three things. One is reach. Today the internet reaches 300 people, but if you look at the television market, right, it's about $3.5 billion. Online videos reach today is about 120 million, right? You could platforms like YouTube and others. That number will go to 200, 300 million, right? So when online video gets to about 300 million reach, the only constraint is really broadband. You can imagine $1 billion moves over from video markets. And then the rest of it really is going to be performance advertising, right? So what people don't realize is India has a $3.5 billion print market, right? So if you look at India, India actually has probably the only large print market that's still growing. Vernacular print is growing high single digits, English print is growing low single digits. But if you look at the 3.5 billion, our estimate is that 75% of that is what is called performance advertising, right? The reason big brands, advertise on newspapers is because it drives traffic into the dealerships, right? Or for that matter, Samsung, they don't advertise because it drives traffic. That's all performance advertising. So our view is, one of the reasons by the way, the CPMs in print are orders of magnitude more than television, right? Which is why, a print publication with 17 million subscribers reach is making $1 billion of revenue, right? So basically a lot of that money, I think, over a period of time will move to digital, because digital as a performance medium is much more powerful than print, obviously, right? So I think it's this combination of reach, performance dollars migrating, and then online video becoming much bigger. Those things combined get to be, make it 4 to 5 billion. I think at the end of the day, look, how do you capture this? I think you've got to build highly engaged audiences, right? There was this period of time where Indian startups were trying to build ad tech companies, right? And, I think increasingly that's going to be very difficult, right? Because, so the way to really, capitalize on this big market is building large audiences, right, that are highly engaged. The right TG, highly engaged audience. So, I have this thing, right? I keep looking for, what's that asset that's going to reach 50 million women every single day, ideally between the ages of 18 and 40. And that asset is worth $1 billion. I'm
excluded.
Sorry?
I said I'm excluded.
No, not because, no, I'm saying that's like, the advertising demographic. Yeah. So, if you can do that, get 50 million women on that asset engaged. This should be an owned and operated kind of property, right?
So how many content companies could we create? We already said ad tech companies, no.
Yeah.
So could we create another dozen content companies, each targeting 25
Yeah, easily, absolutely. Because, I think it's not easy, but the reality is, there's not a lot of exciting content on the internet. It's interesting. So, there is content, but, today, if you take a specific TG, right, pick your favorite TG, let's say, women 24 to 40, right? What's there? There's stuff, but it's I'm yet to meet a startup that has a very, very deep user insights into a segment, right? At the end of the day, it's about user insights. And I think it's going to come. Because, the thing is, we are so enamored with copying something that's been done somewhere else, right?
Because this is behavioral science, and,
Yeah.
to the extent that only people from IIT start companies, then maybe they're not taught as much about behavioral science and so on and so forth, and you need mixed groups.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
there was a talk that Nicholas Zenstrom from ex-Skype did, and he said, new age startup should have among founders, a technologist, a designer, a marketeer, and basically the founding group cannot be too homogeneous, right? And maybe we have that is yet to come in
Yeah, I
India.
mean, I think so, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if you're trying to build a product for a specific demographic, it will be great if you're from that demographic, right? So, two 22-year-old tech founders trying to build a product for 40-year-old women, it's kind of tough, How do you even know where to begin? So what you try to do is you try to rip off some concept that's been built somewhere else and it's not going to work. So those kids should go build something else.
That they know, called Snapchat.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Which no 40-year-old could have conceived of.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, 40-year-olds still don't use it, right? So no chance.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, you got to pick like a space that you know something about, you're going to have a competitive advantage and all of that. So I think, look, my view is, it's interesting, right? My view is, India is, I've used this analogy before. When it comes to startups, right, if you think of it as a test series, 5 test matches, right? 5 days each, 5 test matches. We're still in the first test in the second day. I mean, it's just so early. It's so early. We have so many problems. So many problems, right? So much opportunity. So, but I think, we've got to start focusing on our problems, right? As opposed to sort of looking elsewhere and saying, this is big here, this is big there, let's try to do it here.
So, there's so much talk about the next 300 that
Yeah.
are coming on the internet, right? So if we think about them, and how do you see, what role do they play in transforming current companies or recreating new opportunities that we haven't thought about?
Yeah, I mean, look, at a simplistic level, what has worked for the first 300 million users will not work for the next 300 million users, right? So it's very interesting. We have this initiative at Google called Internet Sati, where we go into villages, we try to get rural women online. And the reason we launched on this is because, there are like 400 women in rural India. Only 10 million of them on the internet. Can you imagine this? 2.5% of India's rural women are on the internet, which is staggering. It's 2016. So you're trying to understand why is that, right? And what we found was, the biggest insight was, women in rural India don't think the internet is for them, okay? They think maybe it's fine for the husband, maybe for the son, but it's not for them and not for their daughters. So we launched this sort of on-the-ground activation program. We go into villages, we train women to train other women about the internet, we get them using smartphones, etc. And the big insight there was they get excited about products that improve their lives, okay? Like killer
Like solar light or what?
Weather.
Weather.
If they know what the weather is, they can figure out what to plant, how to improve crop yields. Look, I mean, most of India
I
lives...
have to ask a sexist question. Why isn't that the guy's job?
Sorry?
Why isn't
No,
that?
no, no, no. But I'm saying, no, the guy already has a phone. But what I'm saying is women, if they know, like, there's a reason why microfinance, right? 40 million women, micro entrepreneurs, right? I mean, look, we know women rock, women rule. So, our view is also like, let's empower, right? But it's, kids, children's education, it's all these things that, so, we have to build products that improve the lives of these next 300 million, right? Because, it's very interesting. I went to a village and I asked this question about, what about messaging? So first they didn't know what it was. You can't explain what it is. And then they said, who would I message? Everybody I know is here. So unlike in China, where there was massive urban migration, right? Rural to urban, people, that hasn't started yet, right? Where are you going to migrate to? There are no jobs yet. You have to create those. So they were like, and they said, what about like, social, it's like, yeah, we have it 6 p.m. every day.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Under the tree or something.
Yeah, like, and so they're like, but then when you tell them, like for instance, on average, I don't know whether you know this, but on average, if you're in a rural in a rural village in India and you want to find out what new government scheme has been launched, right? That's applicable to you. You have lots of schemes. On average, if you're not in close to a city, but otherwise, you have to either walk 7 hours, or you have to take a bus for an hour and a half. So now imagine they just have an app, geolocated.
But apps are out.
Sorry? For today, but then you'll have a bot. No, I mean, Google will answer all these questions, but then, that entrepreneurs build. So, you just basically say, here are the new schemes. You could imagine it's linked through Aadhaar, and eventually, linked to your bank account, so you know what schemes you got, etc. I mean, they get very excited by knowing, like, okay, what government schemes have been launched that are relevant to us.
So should startups start thinking about these next 300 million?
I don't think that has started, but we've actually now, we're working with a couple of players in the ecosystem to get entrepreneurs to start thinking about these problems. Right now, obviously, one of the big constraints is going to be, how do you monetize, right? Now, these are not obvious, straightforward monetization models, right? So esteemed VC firms like you all will ask like 5 questions. they're not going to be able to answer, right? But I think these are the kinds of products that these people want, right? So it's very interesting, Vani. My view, there are 3.3 billion people on the internet today. There are 4 billion people not on the internet, right? I think the current products and services that we think about will probably get us maybe another couple of million more, maybe a billion. But I think to go beyond that, we are going to actually need to go back to basic human needs, and not needs around communication and stuff, but like really things that improve their lives, right? Because if you think about it, in India, most Indians worry about what they're going to eat 2 days from now. That's the reality, right? When I ask my domestic help, how come they don't spend more time on the internet? They're like, we already spend 30 rupees, that's a lot.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Since a lot of this is about behavioral science and today's topic is broadly around marketing, the question I have is, how should companies think about their business models in the context of being effective storytellers, marketeers? In India, building brands seems to be very, very difficult as an innate learning. Companies have maybe interesting product, but positioning, marketing comes a bit harder. So how should they think about that?
yeah, I think, most important thing I think is to build really amazing product, right? So one of my most interesting angel investments is a company called Hello English. It's called Culture Alley. The app is called Hello English. We have 800,000 daily actives, basically in English learners, right? The product is awesome. They actually virtually spend no money on marketing. So I think if you build amazing products, the reality is if you look at the greatest internet companies in the world, first billion users didn't really market, right? So I think that's really important, and a lot of people forget that, right? So if you build an average product, you're going to have to market the hell out of it. Because, quite frankly, people don't want to use it, and then people don't refer it, and so on and so forth. But I think once you have a great product, when you think about market, there's then growth hacking, which I think India really lacks. There are very few great growth hackers in India, right? And I think it's a skill set we need to build as an ecosystem because, if you have a great product in growth hacking, that should basically get you to Series B, right? That's Series B, and after that we can think about so then beyond that, I think you think about, when I think about marketing, then now we come to marketing, right? Which is, I think about the funnel, right? So there's awareness building, there's engagement, there's acquisition and retention. Look, to me, especially if you're in the internet space, it's really about acquisition, right? What are the most efficient, effective acquisition channels? What are the right channels? But then, but before you get to the right channels, you have to, who's the right audience, right? I think this is where, being extremely clear about who the TG is, who are you trying to go after, right? Once you try to go after them, the reality is you can today target several 100 million Indians down to the person, right? And that's where, so I think nailing performance, and the way I think about performance is about acquisition. And I think for startups, what's really important is find one channel that really works, max it. Then you find the next channel, max that. Then you find the next channel, max it, right? Because that's how you build scale within a channel. Because what you find with all these channels, whether it's Google, Facebook, others, it's about scale in a channel, right? And you can see the curve tapering off, right? And so I think that's what's really important at the acquisition layer, right? So last year, there's this huge focus, craze on app downloads. After 6 weeks, uninstall rate is 90%. Does it matter?
And especially if it's not viral and you have to spend a lot of money.
No, because also everybody spend a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to use this product, so you have to promote the hell out of it. And then you use cheap ad networks, like watching some game, something comes up, says, I'll give you 5 rupees off or something else, so you download the app, you don't use the app, right? So I think acquisition is where it's key. But then I think over a period of time is when you start thinking about awareness building, right? So I think also, Indian, at a startup, to me is, unless you're trying to truly change behavior, right? So I think what Flipkart started doing 4 or 5 years after they got founded, which is to really, take mass market by storm, convince sort of middle India about e-commerce, what it is, what benefits you have, etc. That you can start doing after some period of time, right? But to me, in the early days, until you get to, I think today, right? Look, most companies, angel funding, have 1 million users. This is pre-angel funding, which means they got there with no money. Why can you do that? Absolutely, you can do that. You can do that because we have 300 million users. We have several, over 100 million daily actives on just smartphones. So if you have a great product and you've got smart growth hacking, that's your, so my simple wing is get to 1 million users, don't need any marketing.
And that's when the investors line up, right? So now you're a very popular angel investor. So today you already said 25 to 50 million users. Can you get to that? And that's one of the things you would look for to see if they have an idea and a plan to get there and a great product. But besides, what is it that you really look for when you're thinking of a digital media company or a digital content company? What else? What are some of the other factors?
No, so I think so just to be clear, I mean, I've invested in a few content companies, right? It's not like my primary investment theme. Look, I think to me, what's really important is a very focused TG, target group. That's why I've stayed away from like a lot of these sort of all things to everybody sites. Because, it's very difficult to monetize all things to everybody. Yep. It's just impossible. Which advertiser is going to pay a premium for that? Nobody, right? So very focused TG is very important. And then saying, look, what is the understanding about that TG that gives you the insight to go build content for that particular TG, right? And then you have a decision between your own content or you're going to crowdsource content. So one of the things we haven't done in India yet, right, is somebody is going to, India is going to build many companies like Waze, right? It's the power of the crowd. It's the power of contribution through the crowd. But it's focused on content, right? So it's not, I'm not talking UGC. Everybody, every time I say this, they're like, oh my God, UGC, it's not great quality content. Well, do you think Waze is high quality? You bet. It's curated all the way through the stack, right? So I think that's the other one, right? So those are the kinds of things that I look for. And then before I invest in a content company, like, I invested in Little Black Book, right? Which is a local discovery. It's really, really cool. If you're in Delhi, I think they've launched in Bangalore now. I mean, I use Little Black Book. I mean, so here I am, like really old guy using Little Black Book. Most of their TG is like in the 20s. But, when I invested in them, they basically had 100,000 users without paying any money on marketing. And the engagement rates are phenomenal. Phenomenal, right? So what does that tell me? Okay, number one, it's very clear who we are targeting. Number two, they built a product. Number three, the product is loved. Number four, they didn't spend any money to get 100,000 users, highly engaged. And then they've done enough experiments to tell, show us that, we know exactly what our CP, and by the way, they're monetizing. They already had like 10 lakhs a month of revenue or something. So they had done enough experiments to show these are the channels, this is my CPA, and here's what this value of this user is already. This is all before Angel. That's India today, right? So those are the kinds of things, and then obviously the normal things, right? Is it a great team? Can they scale? All those kinds of things. But I think especially if you're going to monetize through ads, and by the way, you have to also say, is it sort of, are you going after brand dollars or are you going after performance dollars, right? Now, performance dollars, harder to build, but more sustainable. Brand dollars, they can move, right? Somebody else builds another asset that's very engaging, it'll kind of move. So those are the things I look for.
So before I open questions to the audience, we'll take a few questions, but I have some personal questions to ask you, yeah? So what's your favorite Google AdWord campaign? My
favorite has been the one we did, the Google search campaign, India, Pakistan. Yeah, I think I really like that. I think because at the end of the day, look, I think a lot of this is storytelling, right? And I think we told that story in a really interesting way. It was embedded into the creative. So this next one that we're coming is really, really cool. And also, so that's, but then, I also like some of the smaller stuff we do, like I don't know how many of you saw the YouTube offline. People keep shaking their head, It's like massive engagement, like boom. And what we do with these things is very rarely would we put something on TV, right? Because we're trying to reach the next 300 million or whatever. But normally what we do is we'll just put these campaigns on YouTube, and if they go really fast, then we know it works, and then we can take it out. Because, we use YouTube to test campaigns, right? So it's because it's TrueView. If people are clicking through and watching your ad, it's a good ad. If they're not watching your ad, it's not a great ad, So
what is the one sort of startup idea that you didn't really relate to but surprised you down the road? I told mine, Snapchat or whatever, but what's the one sort of idea that surprised you by its impact?
Yeah, look, I think there are a lot of things that are happening today that, because of, as I said, right, because of a demographic, like Snapchat, like for instance, Instagram. My daughter who's 10 uses Instagram.
Yeah.
Actually, I started using Instagram because I wanted to follow her and my wife.
Yeah.
And my daughter's like, are you going to post or what? I mean, this is kind of odd, It's like, you're 10, just keep quiet. Someday, maybe. Right? So, I mean, these are products that, at the end of the day, right, they're all like, Like at the same time, she like doesn't understand why I use Twitter, right? It's not something that. So I think there are a lot of things that are happening that because of your interest, because of certain demographic that you can't understand. But my view is, that's good, right? Because, also as an angel investor, for instance, I am very clear. I mean, there are things I understand I'll invest in. There are things I don't understand, which is most of the world, and I don't invest in them, right? So people will ask me, like, why wouldn't you invest in this? Because I don't know anything about it.
Which is a great philosophy according to Warren Buffett, invest in what you know, right? So that's great.
Yeah. Well,
So-
he's had a better track record than I have, but.
So we will take 3 questions from the audience. And if you have a question, this is informal, just so stand up and ask.
So if you all have questions about digital marketing, specific topics, user acquisition, brand building, scaling, whatever, or any other question you have is fine.
Hi, Rajan. So I want to ask you, why do you say that ad tech is not hot anymore? Because on one hand, we are saying that 12% of the marketing is going to be digital. We still haven't figured out how to segment the target audience. So ad tech companies typically help you figure out, what's the target audience for so-and-so products. And
Yeah, no, so look, I mean, at the end of the day, so I want to separate out, right? So there are pure ad tech companies, right? You can think of them, right? And then there are companies that have large consumer user bases that monetize through advertising, that also have ad platforms. Google, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc., right? WeChat. I'm not talking about the latter category. So I think one of the things we've learned over the last several years is having owned and operated properties gives you a significant advantage, right? Simple thing like targeting. Than if you have to get third-party data, right? And if you have, like, for instance, there are a number, I mean, you can pick things in China, right, where it's really closed garden ad formats. Owned and owned properties that are closed garden, which means you can't access the data from the outside. If you're an ad tech company, you're not as effective. So at a simplistic level, what we've seen is pure ad tech companies, right, have really struggled versus large O&O companies that also have large O&O scale properties, assets that also actually have ad platforms layered on top of it. So that's sort of what's happened. Is that to say that you can't build ad tech company today? I think, you can, but, what we're seeing today in the market is, it's very difficult for them to raise funding, like Series A, Series B. I mean, every public pure play ad tech company on NASDAQ is like this. So, people like, I don't know, Vani, what you think, but it's kind of hard to raise money. But, the good thing, by the way, if you're building a company is don't ever raise money. If you don't have to, if you can build your ad tech company by not raising money, go do that, right? I mean, then it doesn't matter. You can build whatever company you want. But if you have to raise money, then, some of these, and, look, the reality is, if you look at the last 5-7 years, especially the last 2-3 years, I mean, we've seen some pure play ad tech companies really struggle. But there are exceptions, like Criteo still continues to do well. But they're very, very few, right? I don't know whether you want to say anything about ad tech. I don't know whether you're investing in ad tech these
The
days.
way I think about it is like horizontal e-commerce. There are things that happen at a certain period of time that's interesting, and then you have to move on to other things. So I think ad tech today, I mean, maybe there is a different kind of a company that can be built. Maybe if you're doing a lot of VR and you know how to create, VR ads or I don't know what, but on a regular conventional basis, there are enough ad tech companies already, and unless you have something new to add to that, maybe there are better opportunities that suits a startup. That's really what it is, right? 2 more questions we can take way at the back. Yeah.
Hi Rajan, I'm Vinay here. This is a question on user.
And by the way, if you are building an ad tech company, don't call it an ad tech company. No, it's really important, right?
That's a good
Yeah.
feedback, okay?
Like,
So,
hey, look, we're big data, new generation, working with CMOs, right? I told one of my startups, it's in
Yeah.
social analytics. No, we're not a social analytics company. We're a big data company, and we are building an AI layer on top of it.
yeah. Cognitive
Got
layer
it, got
on
it,
top of
we got it. Okay.
My question is on marketing and user acquisition.
Yeah.
If I pick a space like travel, the big problem is user acquisition because I think players like Price and Expedia are Google's number 1, number 2 ad spend guys. If you talk to a lot of travel entrepreneurs, they say, we can build great products, but we really lose the game in terms of user acquisition. So you are building a travel startup. How do you acquire users?
Yeah, so I think, look, That's why it's really important to have a differentiated product, right? If you have a really differentiated product, let's say that 1,000 users are going to love, you can actually growth hack your way to about 100,000 users, right? If you can growth hack your way to about 100,000 users, you might be able to growth hack your way another 5x, right? So I think the most important thing is to have a highly differentiated product. And then, you know, if you're smart entrepreneurs, you should be able to get a couple of thousand users, I mean, today in India, right? And then it's about that. And then, you know, from there on out, so the reality is, look, if you're in a very competitive space, let's say like hotel booking or airline booking or whatever, right? I mean, the reality is the CPAs, you know, paid marketing is expensive. And that's why those industries have become scale businesses, right? So, in fact, one of the reasons I've like not invested in like hotel booking, the latest fad is like last minute booking. But same guy, just looking last minute. CPA is roughly going to be the same. So, yeah, I haven't answered your question, but, you know, look, in general, you know, there's this thing called red ocean and blue ocean. Build stuff in the blue ocean. Because in the blue ocean, there's a lot more white space, you know, because if you're trying to build like in the, you know, if you're trying to fight in the red ocean, you better have a really big ocean liner. And that's called Series D.
Well, or you have some deep domain knowledge that others don't, and that's how you
No,
disrupt.
but that's
from
where
the
you
inside.
build a product
Yeah.
that is truly differentiated, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it really boils down to, you know, truly differentiated product, right? And then this thing about growth hacking and organic growth and those kinds of things,
Because
right?
at some levels, at a surface level, Google was in a red ocean called search, but they had
But we had
absolutely
a superior
Exactly.
product, right?
Exactly.
I mean, we gave it the right search results. When you know the right search results was sort of not that normal.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Last
so-
question
Yeah.
for Rajan. Somebody identified already? Okay.
Hello. Yeah, Rajan. So this is not a marketing related question. So I wanted to understand the strategy of Google Capital in India. So
Yeah.
you guys have invested in, let's say, Common Flow and Cardeco.
Fetch Desk, yeah, a bunch of companies.
So what is the long-term strategy? How Google is
So look,
looking?
Google Capital is basically a growth capital investing arm, right? So it's a financial vehicle for Google. So think of it as basically a late stage investing, you know, team that's gonna, you know, they don't really do A deals. I think in India, I think we've done one or two B deals, but usually growth capital, right? So they invested in the US, Uber, Big Check, you know, SurveyMonkey, companies like that. So you should think of them as one of the players in the late stage ecosystem. But it's separate from the business.
And there's also a Google Launchpad and Accelerator, and Sunil is here. So if
Yeah,
you
there's Sunil is here.
questions for him, you can ask him at the break on that. And yeah. Okay, so thank you so much, Rajan.